Keith, welcome to the podcast.
That was a good one. I almost spit coffee all over.
Spit coffee everywhere. So,
okay.
All right, ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's go.
You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, Dwiggy Dwiggins, along with my co-host. I'm going to not say that anymore after the end of this year.
No, you have to.
No way.
Well, then I'm going to say it.
Anyway. I got to come up with something else. So, Mr. Robinson.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Robinson, tell us the guests about this particular episode.
Man, the two guests we had today are probably my favorite guests we've ever had. Brilliant, handsome, articulate, because our two guests are us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a fun episode where we sort of debriefed all of our thoughts from attending the NAR event in Boston. We just unpacked our experience, what the guests, the pod takeover was like. Really fun. We give you some behind the scenes stuff too. And we also give you a little tease on some things we're working on for 2025 . So
I might have talked about CCP. Maybe I didn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. He's like, oh God.
Yeah. No, my favorite. Patented James Dwiggins Dwiggy rant. So make sure you tune in for that part. You're going to dig it, kids. Put it in your ears.
Keith, we're back from Boston.
Phew. I'm tired.
I got an accent now. 6 days. Talk like a Bostoner, you know.
Say ka, bia.
We definitely spent quite a bit of time running around Boston and meetings and hotels. And then we got to interview 8 or 9 different guests. So tell everybody what we did, because it was kind of fun.
Well, first, what we have to do is celebrate us.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Because this is our 100th and something episode. most organized professional podcasters would have a big thing for their 100th.
Yeah.
We ended up interviewing, I think, the EXP CEO is our 100th episode.
He's going to be our 100th episode. So he owes us something for that.
From the NAR show. So we ended up doing our 100th episode while we were at NAR, doing all of that microphone takeover. But so this is our 100 and something, which is probably the most Real Estate Insiders way to celebrate this. First question, actually, we're already off script. Well, in the last 100-ish episodes, what's been your biggest learning? Like, what's been for you like the most interesting or thing you didn't expect? To just share with the audience, like what you've learned from doing 100 of these now.
Well, sometimes guests say things on our show and they stick. So I can't go anywhere now without being called Dwiggy. So that's actually a accurate thing. And if you any of you saw me at NAR, I changed my name badge to Dwiggy Dwiggins just because it kind of took the wind out of everybody's sails. Instead of saying it, they're like, oh, you already put it down.
You got ahead of it. Yeah.
I think that for me, what's been fascinating is to learn how to become a podcaster, which I never thought I'd have on my resume.
Fair. Yeah. Same.
Number 2 is how much people are dying for the truth. And I think that our guests ironically, our guests have been looking for a platform to talk about things in a much more transparent and vulnerable way. And that's been pretty cool to see.
Yeah, for sure.
And then also, it's been a ride. We did this, started this a year and a half ago, basically.
Something like that.
Like that. And it's kind of fun to walk around the hallways and people come up to you and just say thank you. And it's like, that's really rewarding. They're just like, I really appreciate the content you guys are sharing. It's super helpful. And that, I think we didn't start it that way, Keith, but that's kind of how
sort
it's ended up.
there.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. Everything you said. And I think probably the only thing I would add is, you have ideas of what some of these C-level executives and top tier people are, what they're supposed to be like. And at the end of the day, like, and I kind of always knew this, I guess, but they're just human beings, right?
Yeah.
They're just like the rest of us. And so personally, my 2 favorite parts are, one, my reading list has been expanded, and I've had some amazing books and audiobooks come across my desk that probably wouldn't have if we didn't ask that question every time. So selfishly, that one's for me. And then 2, just really getting to see these people as human beings and not, 3 letters and a title and, like just talking to folks. Yeah. And I think there's a lack of that and getting to be a small part of a place where you get to do that has been incredibly rewarding. I did not know that was going to be a byproduct of this, and it's been very enjoyable. Like, I've made real friendships through some of these conversations that we've had on here. Which is great. Which is really wonderful.
No, it's actually been cool to meet. You're right. They're just normal people. They have a title and they do big things. I'm not taking away from that, but
for sure.
If you sit down and have a meal with them, which we've had meals with a lot of these people over time as well, they have the same struggles as everybody else, on a different level, but they're all there.
Yeah. So that's probably been my favorite part, in addition to all the things that you said.
For sure.
Right, so congrats on 100 plus episodes.
You too.
Looking forward to 100 more.
We got a lot of cool people coming on in the next few months. Like, there's the list that you all are going to see come out. Well, our first year and a half has been interesting and awesome, but we're raising the bar here. I know you and I have had some discussions about also expanding the pod a little bit more into agent content. So we've got some stuff that we're thinking about along those lines to bring at least a couple episodes a month on, tactical in-field stuff. So
seems to be demand for that based off of the audience experience. So we're tinkering with some ideas around that. All right. So we did this NAR. We got told, by the way, you can't say NAR. I'm working on it. I got 26 years of saying it the wrong way, and I've got 26 days of saying it the right way. So I'm working on it. So we did a partnership with NAR where we took over their podcast and we were the interviews. We did 8 or 9 interviews in 2 days.
Yeah. With an audience.
In the
auditorium. It was a show.
It was a show. Yeah. Let's unpack what were your takeaways from NAR? What was your macro experience for those? There's, most of the people listening probably didn't get to go. So what were your big takeaways?
So I'll go just first, just to give people a little context. What we did, they had a whole stage set up, which were for TED Talks, and then they would swap it, and we would do the pod there. People could watch our podcast being filmed live, which was, so you're doing the podcast, plus you've got an audience, plus you're on the exhibition floor,
and there's some DJ spinning music at the Bank of America booth or whatever.
It was tough because you could hear a lot of background noise while you're doing the pod. But anyway, so there was that for the setup. A couple sort of compliments, and then we'll dive into the content just real fast. I can certainly say there's, Keith and I we help run. Well, actually, we're just told where to be, but our team runs big events, not the size of what NAR does. No, but I have a lot of respect for what goes into it, and they're a very well-oiled machine. That was extraordinarily apparent.
It really was.
They have a very good team that knows what they're doing. They've got it down to a science, and it was great to work with professionals. They were just, everything was on point, everything was on target. So it was cool as just people coming in to be able to do our part, but have the production team do the rest. So kudos to them on that. We got to interview most of the senior leadership, which was fun. I think we started with Kevin Sears. I wanted to give a quick shout out to him. Done such an exceptional job this year for being thrown into fire early. And he's
early and often.
The thing I'll say about Kevin, I've Keith and I have gotten to know him over the past year, and I've had dinner with him a few times. He is not afraid to just jump in, and that is a very admirable thing for a executive. Going into hostile territory, getting on stage, having conversations. He did that, at Inman, and Inman hasn't been over the years the most friendly group to NAR.
It's been a contentious relationship.
A little contentious there. Brad's not shy about his opinions, and so I got to give him massive credit for doing that, because part of what I think NAR needs to do is not shy away from those things, but lean into those things. And not be afraid about hostile territory. Get in there, and Kevin did that, and I got to give him complete credit. So
he's done it multiple times, multiple stages. He will go anywhere asked and share, agree with him or disagree with him. He is absolutely sharing what he believes and what he thinks is the right approach and the right thing. And maybe he's got too many sports analogies for some folks, but I like him. And he's as authentic as you can be.
Very much so.
Given what has been going on and the noise around NAR, that's the kind of leadership they need right now, if you ask me. And him stepping out and doing that means a lot.
So two other standouts for me was Kevin Brown, the incoming president. We got to interview him. I think it's one of his first interviews really publicly as the, I think it's called first vice president. If I got I don't know if I'm correct. I believe that's what it was.
I don't know.
Actually, he's president-elect now. Excuse me. So that was done
as of the NAR event. Yeah.
I've known Kevin a long time. So he was the president here in California Association here. He's in the Bay Area. Now Tahoe, but that's our backyard. And so I've known him for probably 10, 15 years, and he's going to be a fantastic president, really in tune, understands what's going on. And I think that we all know that this is going to be a crazy couple of years still. This isn't just because administrations are changing doesn't mean there won't be the hangover effect of all of the prior stuff that's happening. So he's going to be a good one to help lead NAR through that. And the fact that they've been working closely together for so long will be a good opportunity for the organization. The last thing I thought was interesting, I want to ask you the same, was I never got to meet Brian Green before.
Yeah, he was great.
And he was great. And so he works with Shannon McGann and the advocacy team. And you all know that I'm really, really particular about how important the advocacy arm is. And look, Keith and I have talked about the problems with NAR. We've certainly not been shy about the things that need to change, but we continue to talk about the advocacy efforts. They had 98% of their candidates win. I think it was 98% of their candidates win that they've backed, based upon how those candidates will work on private property rights and supporting our industry. And so, without that team, and Brian talked about this a lot, like the world will look very different for this industry. And I cannot emphasize enough how naive so many people in this industry are to think that if NAR goes away, it will be good for the industry. Like, it is just a bad idea.
Yeah. And I do look, I understand that, trolling online, raging, screaming into the abyss sometimes feels good, right? Like, when things go bad, like, F it, let's just burn it all down, right? Like, I know that feeling well. I felt it before in my life and career. But how you feel is often a horrible indicator of what you should do, right? So really trying to take some of the steam off of it and look at, and are they imperfect? Of course. Are there things that we wish they would do differently? Yes. But is the net effect valuable? I think the answer to that's also yes. And that was manifested in the conversations.
Sure. And the last comment that he made, which really stuck with me, was, we talked deeply about how owning real estate is the largest generator of wealth for almost all Americans in the country, and that the racial gap is the worst it's ever been. And that is a big problem. And it's getting worse. And so, as a country, I think we have to really start addressing these things and thinking about these things, because it's just, we all know that there's not enough inventory. We know rates need to come down. We know all of this stuff, and then housing will rebound, but we're still 5 million units short of housing. And this is how people move up the ladder in the United States, and we have to figure out how to get more affordable housing. He talked a lot about that, and it was
specifically for first-time home buyers, right? Like
100%.
we have to figure out. I mean, you're probably sick. Everyone is probably sick of hearing me talk about this, but I don't care. It's our podcast. I'm gonna say what I want. We got to figure out the affordability issue, and not for me, not for the folks who own property already. We're fine. We've been stacking equity chips like crazy over the last decades, right? We're good. But for that first time home buyer, we've got to get that problem solved and solve the affordability issue for them. And for me, maybe to transition to my thoughts from the conversations. I'd love to hear yours. That I was impressed that came up again and again and again, like as something that matters to me. I don't think there was a single guest that didn't touch on it at some level, that the importance
and
around,
not scripted. Like you could tell it was a very passionate.
It was at the forefront of everybody's mind, right? So that meant a lot to me. I also want to echo what you said. The NAR team was wonderful to work with. true professionals, organized. It was great across the board. It was nice to just be able to show up and be idiots into a microphone and then, walk away. That's my favorite part. Look, I'm the resident economics nerd for this podcast. Getting to sit down with Lawrence and have a free form conversation was something I've never been able to do. So I was slightly fanboying. I won't lie. If you listen to it, you will hear it.
He's so good too.
So smart.
He's so smart and just...
He's been there forever, right? So he's looked at this data, studied this data in a way. It's sort of like, I don't know, that wise grandpa on the porch telling you everything's going to be okay, right? Yeah. And you believe it because he's seen it all. So love that conversation. And then Jessica Lautz, she and her team are the ones that put out the home buyer, home seller report, which I remember when I was running an office, I would wait for that. And as soon as it would come in, I would digest it and design training materials around it for my office meetings. And you get the playbook for what home buyers and home sellers, what's important to them, what matters to them, what they're afraid of. That's exactly how you should be shaping your conversation with these clients, to check off all of the hot buttons for them, so that you're communicating what your audience's biggest hopes, dreams, fears, worries, and check those boxes and watch how great those conversations go. So those were the two highlights for me.
Two stats I remember, just because I'm weird like that. 6% of sellers last year were FSBO. It was 7% in 2020. I shouldn't say last year. 6% of sellers this year were FSBO. Last year it was 7%, so it's coming down. It's actually the lowest number they've had since
ever, right? I think
it was since record keeping that they've been doing.
Since they started doing it, right? Yeah.
And then buyer agent usage was still around 88% of the time. So, just while you see all the noise and the media continues to try and influence the consumer, people are still saying they want help in the process. Yeah. So
it was also interesting, the sticky nature to me of how many people just reach out to one real estate agent, right? Yeah. Like that number with all of the communication and all the social media and everybody becoming a TikTok star, right? They still only reach out to one, like all of those threats. So it's wild to me how much the business has changed in my 20 plus year. And technology is better, all these things are better, and if you can get the people who know you, trust you, and love you just to call you, you're fine. You're fine. You take care of the human being and the transaction, and you stay in relationship.
Well, you've been talking about that as long as I've known you.
That's true. That's true. But it's nice to see that it's so resilient and so resistant, and that is that's part of the physics, the physics of residential real estate, and that's not changing.
So what was the thing that was not talked about? What do you mean? Was not talked about, or at least in the hallways it was talked about, but it wasn't really talked about anywhere else.
We did not talk about this on
our
the podcast.
Show, our rules. We get to say what we want. So
that's right. So CCP was mentioned.
Oh, it was.
It was. So weird. It did come up in a panel or 200. Yeah. Look, honestly, James, one of the things I love about you is your willingness to go into rooms and just poke people in the forehead. It's my favorite thing to watch. I love it when you do it on this podcast. In fact, I'm about to tee up. Get ready, audience. A patented James Dwiggins rant, because they're my favorite. So what are your thoughts on CCP, James? And what did you take away from NAR meetings in and around CCP?
Well, so a couple things. Number one is I had the opportunity to address the MLS executive forum, I think, where it's basically all the CEOs of the MLSs. Keith got to let me do it. And I said a lot of things, but I wanted everyone in that room to remember that for me, and most of you don't know this, but my grandfather and my father were both association presidents in San Luis Obispo County in California, and they helped bring the MLS up to being what it is today, from a book to a dial-up system called Boris to the system that it is today. And I just remember all these conversations with my father at a later age in my life, and having those to talk about what it was trying to do and how important it was for transparency for buyers, and having listings in one spot and agents knowing what was for sale. And it is sad to me that there are a few individuals who are putting greed above the benefit of home buyers and sellers, and that's all it is. And all of this nonsense that keeps getting spewed about sellers' right to choose. Give me a break. And how many houses have we sold in Next Home? 200,000? I don't even know. Hundreds of thousands of houses have been sold in our company.
Yeah.
And as the CEO, I've never had a seller email me saying, I'm pissed off my agent put my property on the MLS. Give me an effing break. It's just... And it's sad because most of the industry understands this, but there's a few loud people talking about it who don't give a shit about consumers and just want to make it about money. Yeah. And I am not going to let that happen as long as I got a microphone. So I said to them in the room one thing, and I want to fill in with Leo because I love Leo. I told them that they have a legacy to pay attention to, and don't let one company's ambition destroy what we've spent 40 years building. It's not the perfect marketplace. MLSs aren't perfect. There's tons of problems like anything else, but it's the greatest real estate marketplace in the world. Yeah. And it works exceptionally well for buyers and sellers. And we should die on the hill making sure it stays there. Yeah. And Leo was on our 100th episode, I think, somewhere around there. And, he's been really vocal about it too. And that's the interesting part is, Leo, CEO of EXP, very good friend. Yep. They're 3 times the size of some of these other companies. And like, look, if you want to get rid of CCP, it'll benefit us more than everyone else, but we don't believe this is the right thing to do. And, Correct. And so, check out episode 100 because he kind of goes on a rant about that a little bit too. But it's a trying time in the industry because there's very few home sales occurring. We're at the lowest level since 1995. It's tough financially. And
it's been a couple of years of low level, right? So like people are feeling the pressure. They're feeling the stress.
And I get it. I get it. Trust me, I'm in the trenches with y'all. We get it. And it's still trying to do things that end up hurting buyers and sellers is not what we should be doing.
And I agree with everything you've said, and I love it when you poke people in the forehead. It's my favorite. And look, I can understand the seller's rights, the maybe libertarian interpretation. Sure. Right? I own the property. I should be able to do whatever I want with the property. That as a discussion point is hard to debate. Right.
Agreed.
Fine. Yes. Right. But it's what happens after that. Right. Like, my humble belief, and there are some studies to back this up, that if you do not put the property on the MLS, you sell your home for less money. Period.
Every study's actually shown
Correct.
That.
Right. So, people who want to debate it'll say, well, MLS has put it out and they're trying to speak to their book. Right.
I've seen 7 of them done even by independent companies.
I'm with you.
So,
I'm just trying to give both sides of the conversation. That's my irritated James is my favorite James.
I know.
But the reality is so long as you're sitting down, we cannot lose sight of the human being in the transaction. And the importance of our relationship is to guide them and help them through the process. And if a seller is willing to do something that makes them less money, so long as they've been clearly communicated with that that's the result of their decision, I'm fine with them choosing not to do something.
I put that in my op-ed. If there was clear communication, they understand the risks, they understood exactly what was occurring. Not something, by the way, my friend Mike Hickman said this and I agree with him, not something where you upload this form into DocuSign and somebody clicks start, sign, then read it.
Correct.
But like truly understands it. It's not going to be on Zillow. It's not going to be on Homes.com. It's not going to be on Realtor. Like it's all of that stuff.
Statistics
and they're like,
would indicate you'll make less money, right?
Yeah.
Because look, I've had home sellers who decided to accept an offer that was lower than the best offer because they were a police officer and a teacher, and it was a police officer and a teacher buying it, and they wanted to help those kids get their first house. Okay. Like, look, I can agree that people should have the ability to do what they want with their home. What I can't agree with is that if it's something in which it's going to impact their exit, that it's going to impact their financial future, then they should have the full depth and breadth of information to make an informed decision. And that really is the job of a residential real estate professional.
Right. Not being influenced to make the decision because of a marketing campaign that makes it sound better than when it actually isn't. I'll go one step further because I put this in my op-ed a month ago. We'll link to the op-ed too in case people want to read it. I also said that there needs to be a phone call with the seller and the MLS. And the reason I said that was because my friend Justin, who runs Northwest MLS, they require the seller to have a conversation with a representative from the MLS specifically so that they understood what was told to the seller to clarify or correct anything and make sure they understood what was in the form and what it was there without any bias.
Yep.
And then if the seller, to your point, and I have a lot of libertarian in me sometimes too. If the seller still decides they want to do it, well, then that's their choice, and I don't disagree with that. But 100%. My bumper rails are a very clear, concise explanation. I've seen some of these seller informed consent opt-outs. They don't talk about not being on national portals. Like they're not specific.
No, it should just be 200-point font that says, I am comfortable with making less money. Please sign here.
And
right?
Not
if someone's
being here and
correct. If someone's willing to sign that, then cool. Knock yourself out.
Yeah,
Go nuts,
knock
kids.
yourself out.
Yeah.
So I think that was interesting.
Let's do this just to wrap. I mean, why don't you and I both sort of now, just from a macro standpoint, what was we got specific with the CCP part in that conversation, which was all over the halls, but we're just macro. Like, what was it like for you at NAR? What was the experience? And you go, and then I'll go, and we'll put a bow on this little recap.
Yeah. So two things. Number one is we had a lot of work to do. Certainly attendance was really low. And that, to be clear, I think that I'm sure some of that is, people not happy with what's happened over the past year.
Sure.
And also people are starting making a lot of money. So I'm sure that has a significant part to do with it as well. I thought the event was really well run. Boston was a great sale of Boston.
Phenomenal city.
And I think the leadership team and everyone there is trying really hard to find their way. No one has all the answers, but they're listening. They understand what's happening. They understand the gripes. They understand what they're trying to accomplish. I feel like we are making progress. I do. I walked away optimistic that we're getting closer to where we need to be. I think there's a lot of hurdles for us to get to still, and certainly every state's implementing things differently, which is a mess.
Right.
But I generally walked away somewhat optimistic, and I've been living in a lawsuit world for a while, as you know.
Yes. I agree. I think the vibes overall were, I was trying to think of a good analogy when I was sort of debriefing my notes and my experience, and I was journaling about it. And this is the best I could come up with, and it's not great. But if you go to take a jump, right? If you're going to jump to try to dunk a basketball, which is hilarious because I could never dunk a basketball, but
I would pay to see that.
Yeah. Well, how much? Because it's been a rough couple of years in real estate, bro. When you go to dunk a basketball, you have to really you bend, right? You're loading your body to launch it in the air. And that's the best analogy. I felt like the whole industry was sort of preparing for moving forward. It felt like everybody there was, I won't say full blown optimistic, but it was cautiously optimistic. It feels better, but I can't explain why. And there was a sort of sense of a gathering of strength to go forward for that next charge. And that was everywhere from just people I would talk to in the expo hall, NAR members, presidents, agents, random person who was just, who was there from wherever, Wisconsin, shout out Wisconsin. I don't know why. But in general, the vibes felt positive. The worst is behind us. I'm ready to move forward.
I would only add that they're all, yes, and they are aware there's a lot of challenges ahead.
Yeah, for sure.
But they can see those challenges ahead now, so that we know what we've got in front of us and the problems that lie ahead. We got to figure out how to deal with them. But I think the constant being blindsided by things is sort of out of the way now. So I say all of that, we're going to be wrong, but whatever.
We're not all the way through the chaos, obviously, of the settlement and the changes, right? But we're a lot further along than we were several months ago, right? Yeah. And so I think that sort of fog of war has lifted, and there's some clarity. There's still work to do, but there's some clarity on the right way to do it. And most of the people, they're not in this because they love paperwork. They're in this because they love people, and they just want to know how to do it. Just tell me how to do. How do I kind of serve my clients so that I can get them into their house and help them with the life trajectory that they're on? So having that clarity work through, I think was definitely part of the vibes from the event.
I'd love to do it again. So if NAR is listening, we'll be happy to come on and co-host again and do that.
I'll spend the whole year not saying NAR, practicing so that I say NAR.
But it was definitely a lot of fun to do. And for those of you who haven't listened to the episodes, there's about 9 of them. They're about 15 minutes, by the way. They're not very long, so you can kind of you can hit up quite a few of them in an hour if you wanted to punch through them. And of course, if you guys haven't subscribed, please do so. Also, we haven't actually asked this. If you got some interesting guests you want us to bring on, let us know. Just a couple caveats. It's usually C-level as part of our criteria. But send some stuff our way. If you've got this amazing person you met that you're like, this person should be interviewed, we'll be happy to look at them. No promises, but we love having recommendations.
And we're working on some cool stuff to add to the format for 2025, where the audience has voted with their ears and given us feedback, and so we're working on some new stuff for 2025 that should be fun.
And it's going to be a fun year ahead.
Yeah.
So
cheers to my friend. Cheers to 100-ish episodes,
100-ish.
Brother. It's been a fun experience, and I'm excited about 100 more.
Me too. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.